Welcome everyone who's popping in right now. Who we got here? Fetish Magic, Josh Davis. What's up, man? Can't wait to have you on later today. Can't wait to bring you on so we can talk about that event you're organizing. It's going to be fun. Let me share this out for everybody real quick over at the socials. Guys, this race is so close. It's like neck and neck. And now that the votes that are coming in right now, which we discussed yesterday in the stream, the votes from the mountains and the jungle are counted later. And that's what we're seeing now. And we're seeing that once those votes started coming in, that they started favoring Pedro Castillo and he got a boost. And now he is just a hair's worth ahead of Keiko Fujimori right now. Yeah, 1 second, guys. We'll officially start in just a few seconds here. Shadowban Refugee, what's up, fam? Let me check my audio here to make sure that everything is all good here. All right, so we're good. Edwin Medina. So, ¿cómo estás, papito? I'm doing well, my man. All right, so we can get started now. Welcome, everybody, to Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. We're continuing the election coverage here today with what's going on in Peru right now, the 2021 elections between the socialist Pedro Castillo versus the daughter of a dictator, fascist Keiko Fujimori. And as I was saying when I first started here in the stream during the pre-show here, we were saying that it's very much neck and neck right now. So I'm going to pull up the votes that are being counted right now just to show you guys. All right, so this is from the ONPE's official Twitter page. All right, you guys can check this out so that you can look at the updates for the votes. There's some other people that are sharing this. Fiorella's been sharing this also. She's been calling out some shady stuff that's been going on as well. I'm going to try to get her on in this stream, this very stream that you're watching right now. It's very possible that Fiorella could come on. I have my Zoom open right now. She's trying to get an interview right now with Pedro Castillo, who is in Lima right now. So that would be really awesome. She gets to interview Pedro Castillo there in Lima. Man, how far has the combo couch gone, right? If they're able to do that, that would be so awesome. So this is the latest results right here. Let me pull this up for you guys so that you guys can see. Pedro Castillo is right here. Peru Libres, 50.116%. Compared to Keiko Fujimori's 49.884%. That's a very, very tight race. And like I was saying, like they started counting the votes from the mountain and the jungle regions after the ones in the votes that were counted in the urban regions. And of course, the mountain region and the jungle region started favoring Pedro Castillo more. So he got that big boost. Keiko was ahead about 4 to 5%. before that. And I want you guys to be careful, because what we saw about 2 years ago in 2019 is that when Evo Morales got his, when he started leading, they were saying that there's election fraud, because they're like, oh, there's no way he could advance that much later on. Like, he was so far behind. Well, that's because in the urban regions, those votes were counted first, and then the rural regions were counted after. And so that's what gave Evo Morales a boost. So be careful about that, because a lot of people who repeat State Department talking points are going to use that as a talking point to say that there was election fraud in favor of Pedro Castillo. All right, so I'm going to pull up some footage here that's happening on the ground. Another Twitter page that you can follow. In addition to Fiorella's page, I don't know if you're not following Fiorella yet, I don't know what you're waiting for. You go ahead and follow her. She's doing amazing coverage right now on the ground. But you can also follow this page right now, Costatune News. We're gonna look at some of the footage that they're displaying on their Twitter page. Here we see Evo Morales, who endorsed Pedro Castillo. So we're going to hear what he has to say. He said, we hope that Pedro Castillo's candidacy opens the way for the social movements of Peru.
Una enorme coincidencia con el hermano Pedro Castillo. Como estaba en tantos eventos internacionales, y apareció una foto con él. Se ha hecho tomar una foto conmigo. Bueno, me dijo, cuando conversamos telefónicamente, nos conocemos en tal evento, 2 o 3 veces saludamos. Qué coincidencia con el programa del hermano Pedro Castillo y el pueblo, sus movimientos sociales, el magisterio. Por ejemplo, la Asamblea Constituyente, ¿no? Por ejemplo, la nacionalización de la minería, de los hidrocarburos, por ejemplo, políticas de austeridad, ¿no? Son coincidencias. Entonces las transformaciones no solamente están por una cuestión de reivindicación social, sino por cambio estructural. Eso los dirigentes sindicales, los movimientos sociales deben mentalizar profundamente. Mientras no se respeta la dignidad y la soberanía, mientras no se respete la identidad y especialmente la diversidad, las sublevaciones van a continuar, ¿no? Y está pasando en toda Sudamérica, ¿no? Y por eso saludamos al hermano pueblo peruano. Ellos decidirán hoy día democráticamente quién es el presidente. Y esa es la enorme coincidencia con el hermano Pedro Castillo. Coincidencia. Claro, él viene de la lucha social, sindical, comunal, hasta cultural, desde el magisterio. Nosotros venimos del campo, ¿no? Entonces ahora tiene unas lindas propuestas. Ya personaje del hermano Pedro Castillo. Esperamos pues, ¿no?, que le ven a los movimientos sociales en Perú para cambiar nuestra Sudamérica.
All right, so that was Evo Morales. Very similar story to Pedro Castillo, right? They both came from rural areas. They worked their way up. Pedro Castillo became a teacher. Evo Morales also came from El Campo, like the rural part of Peru, worked his way up, and then he became president. So Pedro Castillo might have the same fate as Evo Morales, where he becomes president of Peru, because right now he's winning by a hair. All right, so this is the region that my cousin yesterday was talking about, Ayacucho, which is a region in Peru that was really affected by the Sendero Luminoso attacks on innocent people. And he was saying that if the mainstream media were correct, that we should be afraid, that Peruvians should be afraid of Pedro Castillo because supposedly he's going to open things up more for terrorists, then why is it that the majority of people in Ayacucho who were most affected by these attacks, like in the 80s and 90s, how come the majority of them voted for Pedro Castillo? Like this talking point that they use in Peru is like, oh, el comunismo es terrorismo, like communism is terrorism. Like, can you imagine if like apply that same logic to like religion, right? Because we have religious extremists, right? Religious extremists, like Christian extremists, Muslim extremists. Like it's not a representation of the entire religion as a whole, right? So just if there was like a few if there was a small faction, I don't know the exact size, but if there was like a faction of communists in Peru that did hurt innocent people, it doesn't mean that all communists are terrorists. But that's a talking point that the mainstream media in Peru is using. But yeah, we see here, Ayacucho, Peru is one of the regions with the most votes still left to count. Over 80% of them are for leftist candidate Pedro Castillo. Yeah. So we see here 82% for Pedro Castillo. His party symbol here is a pencil representing, education, and Keiko Fujimori's symbol here is the K. She's almost at 18% here. And then here's something that I really want you guys to see, because there's the voices of indigenous people, poor indigenous people in the mainstream media in Peru is really suppressed. So here's, in this tweet, they're saying that Peruvians are tired of being insulted by the national media. The voter's family were victims of forced sterilization. She denounces corruption by elites. These voices are censored by the national media. You'll only hear them on Telesur. And then the forced sterilization is what happened under Alberto Fujimori, Keiko Fujimori's father, under his regime, where he was trying to control the population of indigenous people. And then this is backed up by government documents. But yeah, let's hear what she has to say.
No me venga a insultarme la prensa peruana diciendo que soy terrorista o comunista, mucho menos maoísta. Yo no soy eso. Yo soy
She's saying that the mainstream media shouldn't be insulting me, calling me a terrorist by saying that I'm, or calling me a communist or a Maoist, and equating that to me being a terrorist. I'm not neither of those. I'm not any of those things.
independiente. ¿Cuál es su nombre, por favor? Mi nombre es Elma Hilario, soy de Apurímac. Es una corrupta que le metan a la cárcel, es mala, cruel. Es una que la comunidad internacional meta a la cárcel a la señora por habernos maltratado. A mi prima le han hecho.
So he's saying that Keiko Fujimori belongs in jail because she's like an accomplice of this forced sterilization that happened with people in these rural areas of Peru. And her family was affected by this. And she's saying that she's a really cruel person. She belongs in jail. And she is under investigation right now. And what might happen to Keiko Fujimori if she loses is she might go to jail. If she becomes president, then she can pardon herself. But if she loses, she might be behind bars.
Esterilización forzada en los años 90. Y eso, ¿quién dice? No dicen nada, señorita, por favor, al mundo que llegue esto. Yo con mi esfuerzo me he educado, a mí nadie me ha dado ni un centavo y aquí estoy. Porque no ocurre el fraude, señorita. Son corruptos. La élite no quiere dejar el poder. 30 años. Muchos de mis familiares han muerto con la COVID porque no había oxígeno. Y ahora me dice que no está.
So she's saying that the same elites are in power that have been in power since the 90s. And her family, she has family members that have died from COVID, and there's not enough oxygen. She's saying, what has Keiko done with the 73 Congress people to help our people during these very difficult times? Per capita, if I'm not mistaken, Peru is leading in the number of COVID deaths. That has a lot to do with their health system in Peru. Peru's health system is terrible. And they've been really affected by this. A lot of family members have, a lot of people have family members that have died because of COVID, because of how horrible the health system is in Peru.
No ha hecho nada, es una mentirosa. Keiko Fujimori es una mentirosa, cruel, malvada. Gracias.
All right, she's saying that Keiko Fujimori is a liar. She's not going to help the people, and she's a really cruel person. And then here we have leader of National Council of Culture. We're here because we support Pedro Castillo because for us, he represents the people of the Andes, campesinos, ronderos, and teachers.
Respaldamos y apoyamos como Consejo Nacional de la Cultura, que somos más de 120 organizaciones, que la presido yo. He venido porque respaldo a Pedro Castillo Terrones, porque representa para nosotros el hombre del Ande, el hombre campesino, el rondero, el maestro, el profesor. Por eso lo apoyamos, porque realmente encarna los sentimientos de los pueblos del Ande. Y por ello y por mucho más, nosotros deseamos un cambio para el país. Ese cambio se trasluce en el cambio de la Constitución. Queremos una patria y linda y libre, con Perú libre. Ese es nuestro deseo, y que sea un derecho en la educación, que sea un derecho a la salud, que no sea un servicio. Y la cultura, fundamentalmente, que es importante para el país, porque también traemos muchas divisas.
Muy bien, ojalá. Muchas gracias.
All right, so he's saying that Peru needs their education system, their health system improved, that it should be a right for people. And Peru hasn't had a socialist government. It's been neoliberalism. And a lot of the people there that are on the right in Peru think that these, neoliberal, like these liberal candidates that aren't socialists, but liberal candidates, like they call them leftists. So they see people like Pedro Castillo as far left. But of course, nothing really improves other than like some tweaks around the edges when they have like a leftist or supposed leftist, but they're liberal. When they have somebody like that, nothing really improves. And he's saying that the culture should also be preserved because it's part of Peru's identity, and it helps increase people's consciousness, right? Because what we do see often is there is racism in Peru. So I did want to show you this. This is Oli Vargas's Twitter page. And he shared something that was displayed on Willax, which I was discussing with my cousin yesterday, how it's pretty much the Fox News of Peru. And in here he's telling us Peruvian media mocking Pedro Castillo's traditional clothes as a star of the campaign. I don't think they're laughing anymore. And we see here he's mocking Pedro Castillo, wearing that the outfit, with the hat, with his stick here. And unfortunately, a lot of my family members who live in Lima, they're buying into and sharing a lot of information that Willax is presenting them, because they're just really afraid of communism. They think that it's going to open up more attacks of, like, some more terrorist attacks. But like I was saying yesterday in the stream with my cousin, if you want to prevent extremists, then you have to reduce desperation. And the way that you reduce desperation is if you give people education, you give people their basic needs. Then they're not going to get they're not going to feel a need to attack people, right? They're not going to feel like a need that they have to go to war. They're also not being logical, because if they want a government that's more representative of them, then wouldn't they settle down if they have like a supposed communist like Pedro Castillo? Pedro Castillo, he's not actually a communist, like how we were discussing yesterday with my cousin. He's more of a democratic socialist. But regardless, the talking point that a lot of people on the right are using is that he's a communist. So if Peru has a communist president, like how is there going to be more terrorist attacks if they got what they wanted, right? It makes no sense. So here's something else. Right-wing Peruvian journalists are already citing landslide rural votes for the left as evidence of fraud. This was the only evidence used by pro-coup idiots to accuse Evo of fraud. This is what I was telling you guys that you have to be careful of when you hear a lot of people on the right that are going to use this as a talking point, or a lot of people who repeat State Department talking points. They're going to say, oh, look, he gained all this support later on before he was behind, and then all of a sudden he gained all these votes. Once again, it's because the rural votes are counted after. So yeah, here's what this right-wing journalist said. Jaime de Altos, en la provincia de Chumbi Vilcas. Al 100% Perú Libre tiene 97%. ¿Eso es posible? Yeah, it is possible. Of course it's possible, because in those regions, those people are really desperate. They don't have electricity. They don't if you ask them about like any pop, if you give them any pop culture reference, they're not going to understand it. They don't have Netflix subscriptions or anything. People in Lima have more in common with us, like people here in the US, than people in their own country that live in these rural areas. And so if they're in these desperate situations, like they know that these right-wing governments or these neoliberal governments or candidates aren't going to help them, because they haven't for decades already. So that's why they're willing to vote for somebody like Pedro Castillo, who says that he's going to give them education, he's going to fund those regions more and benefit their lives with more social programs, improve healthcare. All right, so let's see, what do we have here? All right, so Fee's still not on Zoom yet. But yeah, let's look at this. This is Pedro Castillo arriving at Lima at his headquarters in Lima ahead of scheduled press conference. So this is where Fiorella is at, and she's trying to get an interview with Pedro Castillo. No to fraud. Right, so they were chanting like Pedro for president. It's a whole different ball game over there when there's elections. And from what you can tell, like there's people with like horns and stuff. It almost feels like a football game or something, like people outside like with their horns, like just like cheering really loud, right? All right, let me see if there's any updates on the vote counts. All right, so this is still the one that I showed you guys. All right, let me pull up the chat here and see what you guys are saying. Over on Rockfin, we got Anthony Scannell. What's up, man? How's Mamir? And then in the YouTube chat, we got Anthony Reyes. What's up, man? I forgot all about Nina Turner. I guess it sounds like you guys are talking about Nina Turner there. Shadowban refugee. God damn, that woman is mad. Skeptical Mantis, what's up, man? Revolución. Así están las cosas. What worries is the outside Peru residents vote. Yeah, that's another thing that's another faction that of people who are voting that are going to be counted later is votos al extranjero, like the people that are living outside of Peru, which could go in favor of Keiko. Because usually the people that leave Peru tend to be people that had better opportunities so that they can leave. Sometimes they're people that are, of the professional class that received enough opportunities to get to academia and then leave the country. And so a lot of them may be getting their news from the mainstream sources that Peru has. And so they get this narrative that favors Keiko Fujimori over Pedro Castillo. And sometimes those people who came to the U.S. or came to other countries left Peru because of the war that was happening, with the Maoists there, the Sendero Luminoso. And some of those people, like I was saying, Sendero Luminoso some of them did kill innocent people. They were destroying a lot of like radio towers, electricity towers. People were walking around with guns and stuff, and that scared a lot of people, and then they left the country. Misanthropic and out of coffee. If Peru can go left, even if just a little, it's a victory, especially with the Chileans getting to move left too. Neighbors going the same direction. Yeah, so one thing that I was saying yesterday with my cousin is that it's different in Peru and in other countries in the global south, where there is a chance that you get a candidate that's not compromised, that's not bought out by the establishment, by these multinationals. It's not like in the US where both major parties are bought out by the multinationals, right? So it doesn't matter who you vote for, you're still going to get the same thing, except for the differences are just on the surface with just social issues and their rhetoric. But in the end, then they still do the same thing in serving the multinationals. In Peru, it's different. In Peru, there is a lesser evil that you can vote for. And though Pedro Castillo is not completely perfect, he is a democratic socialist, he's not a full-on socialist, it's still going to be a lot better than voting for the daughter of a dictator, Keiko Fujimori, who not only is she the daughter of a dictator, but shares the similar views as her father and wants to continue that authoritarianism and that fascism again, which is the union of corporations and the state. Like under Alberto Fujimori, he had the mainstream media bought off. The mainstream media, Peru is still feeling those effects. The mainstream media was favoring Keiko Fujimori a lot. She's going to empower the mainstream media and the people who own the mainstream media there. They're going to present everything as if everything she's doing is fine. They're going to be defending her. If they're controlling the narrative like that, if the state is controlling the narrative so much like that, in unison with the corporations and making corporations more powerful, then that's fascism. So I'll pull up Fiorella's Twitter right now to see what she's up to. All right, so here she is, says Peruvians and media waiting for Pedro Castillo in the center of the city in Lima. That's crazy. All right, yeah, so 4 hours ago, we see a lot of the votes were counted in already. All right, so she's reporting that even with the foreign vote, Pedro Castillo begins to lead the people outside of the country. Interesting. All right, so I'm gonna pull up some on the ground footage that's going on right now. I'm gonna go to this Facebook page so you guys can see what's going on. It's crazy how not a lot of leftist channels are talking about this. I think that if things get too intense, some independent content creators might jump on the bandwagon and talk about this, just like what happened with Bolivia. Like when things got really intense and when there was like a coup there, right? Trying to take Evo Morales out, even though he won. But they were accusing him of fraud. And then there were a lot of protests on the street and Evo Morales had to flee. If things get to that level in Peru, then maybe some leftist channels will talk about this more.
Es que hubo un grupo de personas que esperó hasta el último día para recoger su DNI. Como escarmiento, debieron soportar una copiosa lluvia fuera de RENIEC, que atendió de manera especial hasta las 6 de la tarde. Para los comuneros de Patacancha y Huiloc en Cusco, las elecciones son parte de su calendario de actividades especiales. Por eso visten con sus coloridos trajes. Los hombres ataviados con ponchos y las mujeres de ñusta se dedican a la agricultura, la artesanía, crianza de camélidos y la textilería. Pero hoy esas actividades quedaron en pausa para cumplir con su deber. Tuvieron que caminar varias horas hasta el distrito de Ollantaytambo.
Oh, so it says that these people there that live in these rural regions, they had to travel for hours, so that they can get to somewhere for them to vote.
103 años dio ejemplo de civismo a la juventud pucallpina. Al promediar las 4 de la tarde, acompañada de un familiar, acudió al...
So in a way, if this is like the norm for people that live in these rural areas where their nearest the nearest place for them to vote is hours away, then the elections could be rigged in favor of these the more right-wing candidates, where they have more access to places to go to vote and just like a mere minutes away or walking distance away. But it doesn't take them like hours to get there, of course, because these people are also walking, but it takes them hours. But just like Fiorella was covering and how my cousin told us yesterday, there's a lot of places to vote. There's even places like outside in the parks for people to vote. It's a completely different ball game from here.
Los locales de vacunación que fueron utilizados como centros de votación para la segunda vuelta electoral. Dichas sedes fueron cerradas desde el viernes 4 hasta este lunes, hasta hoy 7 de junio, debido a los comicios. A través de redes sociales...
So she's saying that places where people are going to get vaccinated were also used for people to vote.
Ha anunciado previamente que en julio iniciarán con la vacunación de mayores de 50 años. Y fue oficializada la ley que aumentará los recursos destinados a la modernización de las Fuerzas Armadas y la Policía Nacional. La norma publicada en el diario El Peruano precisó que para ejecutar esta medida se incorporarán las regalías que percibía el gobierno de los lotes 57 y 58 del gas de camisea. Asimismo, indicó que se utilizarán 25 millones de dólares procedentes del Tesoro Público. Esta ley iniciará su aplicación desde el 1 de enero del año fiscal 2023. En un plazo no mayor de 3 meses, el Ministerio de Defensa, en coordinación con el Ministerio del Interior, deberán proponer estas modificaciones.
They're saying that they want to modify Peru's police force. Like they want to advance it, like with more technology. This could lead to the further militarization of Peru's police forces. Now, this is something that Keiko was talking about, like in in her debates and in her interviews, like she was saying that the delinquency in Peru is a big problem and that the solution is to just build more jails. Sounds a lot like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, right? Kamala Harris laughing at people that were saying, chanting like, build more schools, less jails, build more schools, less jails. Keiko Fujimori is pretty much saying the same thing. Pedro Castillo is saying we have to go beyond that and ask, why is there so much delinquency in the first place? It's because people don't have their basic needs met. If people had their basic needs met, they wouldn't feel the need to be from people. If they were more educated, they wouldn't be taking this route either or hurting other people. But, you know, it's just a fear-mongering narrative that the mainstream media does. A lot of people fall for this talking point that there needs to be more jails and that the police in Peru need to be armed more.
Para tener una cotización fija.
O también de acuerdo a los datos de las elecciones también.
Claro.
Para que se estabilice.
O sea, está inestable todavía el precio. Pero el precio fijo que tienen ustedes lo están manejando junto con Ocoña también, ¿no?
No, o sea, no nos llevamos junto con Ocoña, sino...
Y los precios de los productos básicos se mantienen en los mercados de Lima luego de los primeros resultados de la segunda vuelta electoral. Los comerciantes aseguran que no hay variación en los
está contándose el voto rural, el voto extranjero, pero tenemos confianza en que se va a mantener el liderazgo del profesor Castillo.
¿Algún otro personaje de la política ha llegado o usted ha venido solo?
No, Verónica Mendoza está reunida en estos momentos con Castillo. Entiendo que está también Pedro Franque, está Hernando Ceballos.
So that's where Pedro Castillo is at right now.
Que quiere escuchar al profesor.
¿Algún otro personaje del...
So Verónica Mendoza, which was the other leftist candidate that was running for Peru, that was more palatable for some of the people in the cities than Pedro Castillo has endorsed. She had endorsed Pedro Castillo. And it seems like she's also there with Pedro Castillo right now in his headquarters.
Sergio Tejada, quien fue congresista en el periodo 2011-2016, en este momento se encuentra aquí, junto con todas las personas simpatizantes de Pedro Castillo. Ya lo habíamos anunciado, la conferencia de prensa se ha cancelado, pero al parecer va a haber un manifiesto, va a haber un pronunciamiento de parte de Pedro Castillo a todos los simpatizantes que han puesto, digamos, en jaque a la avenida 9 de diciembre, porque van movilizándose hacia la oficina de la OMPE, que es en el Girón Guay, mientras el candidato Pedro Castillo no se pronuncia, los ánimos aquí se siguen caldeando, revisando en cada momento cómo va cambiando la página de la OMPE sobre el conteo rápido, sobre el conteo al 100%, Fátima.
De acuerdo, Ricardo, gracias por la información, actualizarnos qué es lo que ocurre en el centro de Lima. Nuevamente, pedido de calma a todas las personas que se encuentran allí y vámonos ahora con más información para ver cómo se desarrolla el conteo de votos en el voto de extranjeros, cómo los peruanos que están viviendo en el exterior han votado. Vamos con eso.
Right, so they're looking at the foreign votes that are coming in right now.
Así se llevó a cabo esta segunda vuelta en el mundo. España fue uno de los países donde más afluencia de peruanos se pudo observar. 166,000 compatriotas estuvieron habilitados para sufragar en las 511
So they're counting the votes that came in from
país.
Spain.
En Madrid, más de 70,000 personas participaron de esta segunda
Almost
vuelta.
70,000
Esta vez el
people
proceso
in
fue mucho
Spain
más rápido,
voted
puesto que
for
el
Peru's
consulado innovó
election.
una manera más rápida para que cada persona pueda encontrar su mesa de votación.
Voy a consultar mi mesa con esta nueva forma.
Yo, doesn't
que han
that
inventado,
lady
consulado
kind of look like
súper
Tulsi
rápido
Gabbard?
Para saber en qué mesa.
Hola, buenas, ¿qué tal?
Hola.
Tenemos aquí, súper rápido, y sale la mesa y la fila que está ahí,
¿Qué
¿vale?
mesa me toca? A ver.
277 es la penúltima fila.
Venga, muchísimas gracias. Hasta luego.
Aquí en nuestra región, en Argentina, más de 143,000 peruanos en 7 ciudades formaron largas colas para poder sufragar. En este país se encuentra la tercera comunidad más grande de peruanos fuera del país, la gran mayoría en la ciudad de Buenos Aires, donde 9 centros fueron habilitados para el proceso. En Colombia, 2.240 electores
All right, so
podrían...
she's saying that people in Colombia and in Argentina are also voting. AdKid, you ask, Franco, how does a leftist government in Peru improve the lives of everyday Peruvians while the powers that be strategize to diminish Peru's economy? So with a more leftist government, like Pedro Castillo's, it's there's going to be more. They're going to nationalize more programs, right? There's going to be more social programs that'll benefit the lives of people, whereas Keiko doesn't wants there to be more privatization. She doesn't give any concrete plan for how she's going to improve Peru's healthcare system, which is a big reason for why there's so many deaths as a result of COVID. Pedro Castillo, on the other hand, wants to nationalize it more. Like he says that the health system there is a right for the people. Keiko Fujimori, like her father, is open to negotiating more with these multinationals to privatize more minerals, right, even further, so they can benefit. And as these multinationals, which hold a lot of influence in the U.S. as well, some of them are American, like they're American corporations. As those corporations get more powerful, they can fund more politicians here in the States and be a big influence on policies that get passed here domestically so that they can further become more powerful, right? So this is why I was saying yesterday that domestic policy and foreign policy are the same thing.
Boca de urna. Sin embargo, no fue lo único que resaltaron, puesto que también se mencionaron los desafíos del nuevo gobierno, como lo son la crisis política, económica y sanitaria. La tercera de Chile, O Globo de Brasil, Caracol de Colombia, siguen minuto a minuto cada actualización en el conteo de votos y resaltan las palabras de los candidatos, quienes afirmaron que respetarán los resultados. Medios europeos también resaltaron la noticia. El portal El Mundo de España no solo mencionó la mínima diferencia entre ambos candidatos, sino que resaltó la preferencia que Pedro Castillo tiene en varias regiones del interior del país. Algo similar a lo resaltado en el portal francés France 24 y el alemán Deutsche Welle. Portales del mundo como The Washington Post, Al Jazeera y BBC Mundo hicieron un recuento de lo que fue esta carrera electoral y esperan el resultado final de tan ajustado proceso.
So they're saying that BBC, Al Jazeera and Washington Post are reporting on these election results as well.
El conteo en la página oficial de OMPE donde dice ámbitos todos para que vean.
So not much different from what I was showing you there. With the results, Pedro Castillo still winning by a hair.
50.16%, mientras que Fuerza Popular obtiene 49.83%.
Let me see what's going on here on the Rockfin. Climate Rebel asks, isn't that double deeping globally speaking? Those wealthy people shouldn't be able to vote. Some of those people are still Peruvian citizens, like they still held that citizenship, so they're still able to vote even though they live in another country. So here we see what RT is reporting on the ground here. There's Castillo up there.
Se vienen disfrutando del verano europeo gracias a la reducción de restricciones. La ciudad norteña italiana ya es zona blanca.
Hang on a sec, let me see what happened here. Okay, there we go.
Los residentes y turistas de la ciudad italiana de Venecia se encuentran disfrutando de día y solo se requiere respetar el distanciamiento social. Una pareja de novios es la prueba viva del regreso de la felicidad. Luego de los impedimentos para realizar su boda, finalmente aprobaron hacer.
Emblem Fate, thank you very much for the super raid. Does Peru allow their leaders to be dementiated, or do they have standards unlike America? What do you mean by dementiated? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Dementiated. Dementiad. Or demonized. Alright, so let me pull up to see if there's any other updates here. Let me see if Oli Vargas has anything new. It says we're stepping up a gear. We can't leave. Okay, this is what he has pinned. Yeah, so here he makes the comparison too, which I was telling you guys. True, if Keiko Fujimori doesn't win now, she'll likely face the same fate as her comrade, Janine Áñez. This guy, Simon Tegel, says Peruvians stressing out this morning over who is going to be their next president might spare a thought for Keiko Fujimori. For her, the results will be the difference between leading her country or potentially spending most of the rest of her life behind bars. Let's see what Fiorella is, if she's updated anything on her Twitter. Oh, Emblem Fate, you meant dementia. I don't know. It's funny. They did update their constitution like in the 90s or something, with saying that if they're not, if the president is has any mental illness or something, then they have to step down. I don't remember the exact words of it, but that's something that I discussed with my cousin in a video a couple months ago that we did when there was a lot of people protesting in the streets, because Peru had they had 3 presidents in a matter of a week, and it's because of in their constitution it says if the president is mentally ill, then they have to step down, and then what they can classify as mentally ill is like if the president is acting immoral, then it could be because they're mentally ill, so they should step down. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting if they had like a candidate that's like Biden, who has signs of dementia, like clearly he's forgetting stuff, right? If they can be like, oh no, he's not right in the head. He's cognitively not okay, so he should step down. All right, so let's see what if he's updated us here with anything. Nope. Alright, so still loading here. So this is from 11 minutes ago. And is this the one I clicked on? Yeah, 11 minutes ago. It's blurry right now. I'm waiting for it to clear up. All right, so it's more clear now. Yeah, so Pedro Castillo keeps going up very, very gradually. Before he was at like 50.11, now he's at 50.165. What's this 100% here? Total de votos válidos. Yeah, so he keeps going up just a little bit. I think he might win. I think Pedro Castillo might win, and that this might result with a lot of people in the streets of Lima, because Lima, Keiko is very popular. She won in Lima. It was like about 60% to 30%. I'll pull up the exact numbers when I see it. But people are going to be claiming that there was fraud. Because again, a lot of people in the city of Lima are very afraid of communism. They equate it as terrorism, and they're gonna think that there's absolutely no way that a communist / terrorist could have won. And so they might think that they're justified in going out in the street and, breaking stuff and probably attacking people on the ground. I'm gonna go back to Oli Vargas's Twitter page here, because he was putting up some videos here showing stuff happening on the ground, like people assaulting each other. Here's something interesting too. This is showing how the gap between Keiko and Pedro Castillo was evaporated as they started counting the rural votes. Like, you see that? This was 7 hours ago. Now, Pedro Castillo is, he's above Keiko right here. Now, like, this is only showing, this is showing from how it looked 7 hours ago. But now he crossed her now. He's ahead of her. Yeah, see, this is, in Lima, you see, she gained almost like 70%. 68.1% of the vote went to her, and for Pedro Castillo is 31.9%. Whoops, not trying to go to my timeline. Peruvian journalist assaults a Pedro Castillo supporter for tossing a coin at him. He tossed a coin at him. Dang. Oh yeah, some updates here about what's going on in Mexico also, because they had midterms. Pro AMLO coalition wins majority in Congress. And then Ali also tells us what we're looking at right now, which is leftist Pedro Castillo currently winning by a whisker in presidential election exit poll. Oh, that was 14 hours ago. In the exit polls, he was winning. But now we're seeing with the official vote counts, he's also winning by a hair. Yeah, so here we're seeing like in the Amazonas, like the jungle region of Peru, Pedro Castillo won by 68%, which is almost 70%, and Keiko was at 32%. It's almost like exactly flipped, right? From what we saw in Lima in the city to like what's happening here in the jungle. And he's a Madre de Dios. Madre de Dios, if I'm not mistaken, is higher up. This Boca de Urna. Boca de Urna is like the exit polls that were counted, right? Also, Pedro Castillo almost at 70% here, 69.3%. Keiko at 30.7%. So like later in the evening yesterday for Peru, like we see that Pedro Castillo reached 50.2% with the exit polls. Keiko was at 49.8%. So it is closely reflecting what we're seeing with these official vote counts. All right, so I'm gonna pull some stuff up here. What else can we add? All right, so here's an article. Pedro Castillo calls on his supporters to defend each vote from possible foul play. It seems like in Peru, people are more vigilant and they care a lot more to make sure that our elections were free of fraud. Here in the U.S., what we saw, a lot of people on the left, the more consciously woke, politically woke people, right? A lot of these progressives, they weren't making sure that our elections were free of fraud. Unless it was a primary, there were some people that were, some progressives that were. But then a lot of others were dismissing. It was like, whatever, we got to do it. We just got to support Hillary now. Like back in 2016, right? And with what was happening with Bernie in 2020, even like with what we saw with the Iowa caucus and like the shadow app, like people like TYT, Majority Report, they didn't really care about that and really look closely into that. The Combo Couch is looking closely into that. There's people like us, like me, like Steve from Soul Newsday, who bring them on to talk about this stuff. But this is something that really needs to be looked into. Like, if you care about democracy, you need to make sure that you have a fair election that's free of fraud. But no, a lot of people here, unfortunately, a lot of people on the left even they think that our elections are free and fair. Without even looking into it, they think it's free and fair. And then they dismiss other people as conspiracy theorists who want to challenge the election results. Even though that's being the most scientific, you're being the most scientific if you're asking questions and you're being skeptical. You want to show that something is true using evidence, not just using assumptions. Like the assumption that the Republicans always cheat in the general election and the Democrats don't, or that the Democrats don't cheat as much as the Republicans. Like, that's just an assumption. You're not being scientifically minded by just using assumptions for your conclusions. Oh yeah, here's something. Fujimori supporter arrested for ballot stuffing. You're right, Anthony. I'm a right winger. I'm a right winger just because I care about election integrity. Anybody who cares about democracy and our elections, for them to be free and fair, are just right wingers, right? And yeah, I know you're being sarcastic, Anthony. Fujimori supporter arrested for ballot stuffing. Peruvian media has reported that Jennifer Daniela Rodriguez Moran, an electoral observer belonging to Fuerza Popular, the party of far-right candidate Keiko Fujimori, has been arrested by police in the city of Tumbes for marking at least 3 ballot papers in favor of Fujimori. According to the police report, the incident occurred at 8:45 a.m. at the Rigoberto Meza Chunga School, inside classroom number 203 and voting table number 075545. Cosme Damian Silva Espinosa, an electoral observer for Pedro Castillo's Peru Libre Party, caught the offender marking ballot papers and reported it to electoral authorities at the voting station. Joe Kilver Cornejo Sandoval, Special Electoral Jury, JEE, and John Paul Jimenez Silva of the Decentralized Office of Electoral Process then called the police, resulting in an arrest. Peruvians vote today in the second round of the country's presidential election between far-right candidate Keiko Fujimori and leftist Pedro Castillo. When was the last time you guys heard of anybody in the US get arrested for this kind of fraud? Like, I could be wrong, but I haven't heard, like in 2020 or in 2016, I don't remember anybody being arrested for this kind of stuff. In a general election, especially, you know, both are establishment parties. Both parties are going to try to cheat. Yeah, let's look at this video here. These are wild ass vehicles. These are like they're called motor taxis. They're like a tricycle.
Esta es mi casa, estos son mis paneles solares y lo hice a cero costo inicial. Cero costo inicial. La razón principal por la que hice.
Buenas tardes, Mauricio.
All right. RPP is like the CNN of Peru, by the way. It's a very established media source.
Así es, una mujer.
It's being really
Se
laggy.
encuentra en la comisaría El Tablazo de la ciudad de Tumbes en calidad de intervenida tras ser acusada de marcar cédulas de sufragio a favor de Fuerza Popular, confirmó Perú Valentín Jiménez La Rosa, presidente del Jurado Electoral Especial en Tumbes, donde los fiscalizadores de dicho ente se encuentran desarrollando las investigaciones respectivas. Se trata de Jennifer Daniela Rodríguez Morán, quien es personera del partido Fuerza Popular y según las investigaciones preliminares marcó con X 3 cédulas de sufragio favoreciendo a la candidata de su partido que representa. Al respecto, la Policía Nacional del Perú reportó que el hecho se registró a las 8:45 de esta mañana en la institución educativa Rigoberto Meza Chunga, en el interior del aula número 203, mesa de sufragio número 075545. En la denuncia de la Policía Nacional, el fiscalizador del Jurado Electoral Especial, Joe Kilber Cornejo Sandoval, y de la ODP,
So it's pretty much like the
Juan
information that
Paul
we were just
Jiménez
hearing,
Silva.
that I was just reading to you guys. Let's see what else is here. It's showing some of Castillo supporters dancing in the street outside where the leftist candidate cast his vote. So this is in Cajamarca, where Pedro Castillo voted. We're seeing people that are dancing out in the street. All right, let me check up Zoom, see if Fee's waiting there. All right, she's not there yet. So she was supposed to be on, but with all the craziness that's happening there on the ground, I imagine it's really difficult for her. So we'll see. If she doesn't come on the show today, then we'll try to get her on as soon as possible. Either later today or tomorrow. Wait, let me see here. Yeah, so she hasn't been able to text me or anything, which means that probably she's run into a lot of stuff on the ground trying to get an interview there with Pedro Castillo. So yeah, I'll continue this later if I can get into contact with Fee and then I can bring her on and interview her and ask her what she's been seeing on the ground. We can talk more about I can't remember his name, Piero Orveto, who's somebody who has ties to the Keiko's party in the past and has worked for the country's intelligence in the past, and he's overseeing the election. And then we see that he met with Keiko at some point, which is a complete conflict of interest and should be illegal. So I'll ask her more about that. I'll ask her more about what she's been seeing on the ground. You can go over to the Combo Couch as well. They're also members of the MCSC network, just like this channel. They're doing amazing coverage of the elections as well. Pasta's also at Georgia covering election integrity issues over in Georgia. We're going to talk about what he's been seeing there in Georgia on this show tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm having on Quinn, aka Propaganda Live, Ali Alexandra, and Pasta Jardula of the Combo Couch. We're going to talk about some foreign policy as well as what Pasta's been seeing there in Georgia. But yeah, guys, I'll see you guys later. Hopefully we can get that interview with Fiorella Isabel. And yeah, guys, stay informed. These elections are really important. Domestic policy equals foreign policy. I love you all. Take care.